This was the first time somebody was actually showing that, a complement in alternative medicine specific to the Indian subcontinent can actually cause harm, even leading to liver failure and death.
We're going to include everything you said about the legal battle you faced in this video. So if the video gets taken down, you know exactly why. This is the podcast with Dr. Abby Phillips, where I discussed alternative medicines with him, and parts of the podcast I've already used in my recent video on the Ayush Ministry. But in this video, I go into a lot more than just alternative medicine. We talked about modern medicine doctors and hospitals treating patients like business sometimes, and how because of this, people have a mistrust in modern medicine. We talked about unethical practices in medicine that sometimes doctors do. We talked about that and a lot more coming up in the podcast. Hi, my name's Pranav. You're watching the Scienceisdope podcast with Dr. Abby Phillips. Let's begin. Welcome, Dr. Abby Phillips, to the first edition of the Scienceisdope podcast. I still haven't decided what to call it, but you're my first guest.
Thank you for inviting me as the first guest. I think it's an honor and a pleasure being here.
Yeah, it's the same for me, likewise. And I have no idea how long this podcast is going to be, but you guys know it's down there in the timestamp. But I wanted to do a very in-depth and long-form podcast with you. And let's talk about everything. Right from the beginning. So, first of all, I think most of my audience knows who Dr. Abby Phillips is. But in case anyone doesn't know, why don't you introduce yourself?
So I'm popularly known as the liver doc, and a lot of my work and science communication is on Twitter.
Okay.
Not yet fully on YouTube, but as a professional, I am a liver diseases specialist. So I work at Rajagiri Hospital in Kochi, and I have been working since 2016 as a consultant, initially a junior consultant, and now currently I'm a senior consultant. And I'm also a clinician scientist, which means apart from caring for patients and managing inpatients and outpatients, and also critically liver disease patients, I perform clinical research on the side. So I have a team of people who help me with the clinical research, and we are one of the highest published hepatology units in the country at the moment. So basically, that is me. So I am a doctor who also love teaching, not just hepatology, but overall health-based information.
Okay. Great. So, like I said, I want to go really deep into this. Let's start from right at the beginning. So, did you want to do this professionally right from childhood, or how did you know you want to do this?
Yeah. So the doctor bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I never wanted to become a doctor.
Oh.
Yes. So initially, I mean, I loved screenwriting.
Oh.
That's something
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's something that I love, because I don't read novels, but I love the graphic novel medium.
Okay.
So I used to read a lot of comics and graphic novels, and I used to love writing. I don't have much drawing skills, but I wanted to do screenwriting and media. That was my first love. But then my dad is a doctor, so he's a very senior gastroenterologist. He's actually one of the founding fathers of gastroenterology in the country.
Oh.
And a Padma Award winner also in 2010.
Okay.
So he has been practicing for a very, very long time now. I think he's completing almost 45 years of gastroenterology practice. And this is how things go. I mean, during my time, we had an option of, you become an engineer or you become a doctor, right? You don't have anything in between. And what happened was that, even though I was interested in that, at some point I started looking at, medicine as a profession. And I think that happened when a lot of my friends in school, they were interested in pursuing medicine.
Okay.
So they were all preparing together for, at that time we called it AIPGT, All India examination, not like the NEET that we had at the time for MBBS and post-graduation. So I just, went with the flow. And I did study a lot in a place called Thrissur, where at that time we had a professor by the name P.C. Thomas. So he was the only guy at the time who gave a lot of these MBBS entrance exam coaching. And I was there for about 9 months. I stayed in a hostel there. That was my first exposure to hostel life. Very, very tough hostel life. You have to get up at 5, go to church at 5:30, start your classes at 6. I mean, he's a very pious person. And by the time you finish, it's 4:30. Have an early dinner, get to sleep. You can't even put on lights beyond 10. You have to sleep before that and get up early in the morning. So all that responsibility, that discipline, I learned there.
Okay.
And after 9 months of studying there, I got through my MBBS, and I did my MBBS at St. John's Medical College in Bangalore.
Okay.
So MBBS, I mean, like every person, I think it's a haze. So you get in and you have no idea what you're pushed into. You have a lot of basic sciences to study in the first couple of years. I mean, it just goes on and on. But one thing I loved about my bachelor's time was that it was a totally different kind of life there. Right, 5 years with the same group of people studying medicine.
Yeah.
So that is when I started feeling that medicine is something really worthwhile. And once I finished my MBBS and started my internship, that is when I started to feel that importance of serving people. You know, during the time we study, it's just study, mug, pass your theory exams, somehow pass your Viva exams, do that somehow. I mean, people just keep doing. I mean, you go with the flow and you finish it. You don't come out very with the wisdom of the knowledge of the human body and all after MBBS. You are totally confused after MBBS actually. And once I went into internship and started actually dealing with real patients, that is when it hit me. But even then, I was not very sure what I was going to be. Right? I did not have any specifics like surgery or medicine. Then after MBBS, the MBBS is not enough. I mean, everybody knows that now. So you have to go into specialization. So I was never a guy with skills in surgery because I did not like the sight of blood.
Okay.
And I'm not very skilled. So even during our dissection classes, the girls in my batch used to do all the dissection on cadavers, and I used to stay at the back. And so surgery was never an option for me. So I went into medicine. And after my MD in Neelratan Sarkar Medical College, I again spent an year wasting my time because MD is not enough, right? You have to super specialize.
No.
So that was when that important part of going into your specialization career came in. So all my other aspects of, my screenwriting and all that hobbies, everything went off the moment I entered medicine. So my dad is a gastroenterologist. So my first option is to become a gastroenterologist. But he told me that, gastroenterology is now, I mean, there are a lot of institutes that do gastroenterology, give gastroenterology degrees, DM and DNBs. So at some point it is going to get saturated. And gastroenterology is going to be reduced to a skill-based practice. It'll be like endoscopies and ERCPs and a lot of skill-based practice, but not too much to work on from a clinical perspective. So he said, why don't you try hepatology? Because hepatology was at the time coming up. And the only person who was really driving hepatology in the country was Professor Shiv Sarin. So he was initially at GB Pant Hospital in Delhi, and then he moved to this new institute that he built for himself with the help of the governments in Delhi, called Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences.
Okay.
So they first asked me my dad asked me to go and work there as a non-academic senior resident, which means I'm not in the program yet, but I'll get a feel of how the program is. So when I went in there, it was nothing like what I had been through in my MBBS or MD, because that was some serious stuff going on there. And people were like really into it. And that is when I started understanding the importance of clinical research. Because there, they cared for the most difficult patients, in medical practice, that is critically ill cirrhotics. And on top of that, they were actually looking at better options and better ways to improve care by doing clinical research on the side. So that's something completely different. So I completely understood why hepatology is so important, because it's not just skill-based, but it has a lot to do with going deep and identifying and finding out novel things, doing more for your patients. You have an opportunity to do more for your patients. So that is how I started off with hepatology. So I worked there for about a year, and then I cracked the exam. At that time, they had a separate, because it's an autonomous institute. I cracked the exam, and I got into the next year. The year that I worked there as a non-acad senior resident, the next year I joined as an academic senior resident there. So that is how I went from planning to be a screenwriter and a media person to becoming a hepatologist. So I think it was meant to be, because I never had that, that drive to become a hepatologist or a gastroenterologist.
And now how do you feel about your current
no regrets.
profession?
No regrets. I mean, it's tough. Sometimes I feel I need to get out. At some point I was actually looking at starting some business on the side. Because this is one thing is that you don't get to have a good life. Even if I look at my quality of life, or if I look at my savings perspective and things like that, it's very poor, right? The work is good. You're serving people, and you get that gratitude. And sometimes you don't, but still, you're satisfied with the kind of work that you do every day. But the quality of life is so poor. For example, I have a very hectic schedule every day, almost every day. And it's a lot of responsibilities. And add to that teaching, clinical research, doing more for your inpatients, trying to figure out new things in hepatology practice. And all of this actually takes a toll. So you lose your quality of life. But ultimately, I have no regrets, because it's keeping me up on my toes all the time. So I'm never bored any day. I'm always doing something.
So can I get a rough idea of the time frame? Like, when did you start your MBBS? When did you go into hepatology?
So I did my MBBS in 2001. Entry batch 2001. Completed it in 2007, internship, and entered into MD in 2009. And entered into DM in 2013. So I finished in 2016. In 2016, I came back here. So I came back. We formed this company called Philip Augustin Associates. My dad's name is Philip Augustin, by the way. And we formed this company called as Philip Augustin Associates, and we started giving gastroenterology and hepatology services to small hospitals initially. So we were at PVS Memorial Hospital first. Then we moved on to Ernakulam Medical Center, where we stayed for about 3 years. And slowly our unit started building up, because we were doing a lot of good work. We were publishing a lot. So we started getting a lot of fellows in. And we started getting more specialists into our consultancy group. And currently we have about 12 doctors under us. And we are now working at Rajagiri. So that small company has come a long way, and it's settled in now. So that is the reason why I had to come back from Delhi quite soon. So I did not have time to do any additional fellowships or things like that, which I don't worry about, because I see a lot of people, even after completing the super specialty, they again do fellowships and go for some training here and there, go abroad and spend a year. But I don't think that is required, because I feel that what I did directly coming down and starting my practice right away actually helped me build a good patient base. So you can actually work more, gain experience more the moment you start working directly within the patient community, instead of going around doing fellowships and things like that.
Nice. So I want to get into the main topic of today. How did you discover that there was this alternative medicine issue in the country?
Oh, I was. Even this, I was pushed into it unknowingly. Yeah, because when I started working as studying DM hepatology at Delhi, my focus was alcoholic liver disease. So when we see a lot of patients with a condition known as alcohol-associated hepatitis, which is one of the most sinister things that you can see in hepatology, because it has a very high death rate. So that happens in long-term alcohol use disorder patients with and even binge drinkers, where they have heavy amounts of alcohol that leads to alcohol-related hepatitis. sudden worsening of liver functions, jaundice, fluid in the abdomen, vomiting blood, they go into brain failure, infections, multiple organ failure. This all happens within few weeks to months. So it's very difficult to manage them. So that is when, so my work, my thesis work, everything was on that in ILBS in Delhi. And when I came back, I wanted to continue that here because because Kerala is another place where you find a lot of people with alcoholic liver disease, and I wanted to continue that here. But what happened was that in 2016, when I joined PVS Hospital first, I saw a group of patients with severe hepatitis, jaundice and everything, but without any identifiable cause. For example, they came in with a bilirubin of 20 milligrams per deciliter, even women, sometimes children. So there was no alcohol component there. They were all teetotalers. They had probably some metabolic disease like diabetes or hypertension or hypothyroidism. But all that won't cause so much of jaundice. Then something has to be there acutely affecting them. So then we looked at viral infections. So viral hepatitis A, E, even leptospirosis, that is very common in Kerala. We call it rat fever here. Leptospirosis, that can produce jaundice. So all of those infections, everything was actually negative. So then we looked at if they are taking some potentially liver toxic drugs. Like for example, an overdose of paracetamol can cause jaundice. If you go more than 5 to 8 grams per day, it can cause jaundice. Beyond that, it can cause liver failure and things like that. And there are some old world painkillers that can cause jaundice. Some very simple antibiotics like amoxicillin clavulanic acid, which is one of the commonest cause of liver injury in the United States, can cause jaundice. But none of these patients had any of that. They were like clean from that aspect. So then we looked at diseases like autoimmune hepatitis. So you have immune-mediated liver injury, autoimmune hepatitis, that can affect them. Even that was negative. So we looked at, and ultimately when you have no reason clinically to identify as a cause for jaundice, you subject the patient to a liver biopsy. So we did liver biopsies for many of these patients who had no identifiable cause of jaundice or hepatitis. And the pathologist was equally stumped, because they have never seen a liver biopsy like that. For example, if it was a paracetamol poisoning, then you will have a specific signature on the liver biopsy. You know that this is the pattern of injury, and so this is due to paracetamol. So if you have an alcoholic liver injury, you have a specific pattern in the liver biopsy, and you know this is because of alcohol. But in these patients, they were not able to pinpoint. So some of them had few features of alcoholic liver disease, some of them had features of viral hepatitis, some of them had features of drug-induced liver injury. It was a mixed bag of things. So they said that something is wrong. It looks like they have been on multiple things possibly, or they are not giving you a right history. So please go back and ask them properly about any other drugs or whatever they're taking. So we casually started asking these patients retrospectively if they were on any other drugs. So when we said drugs, they all think about modern medicines. So they say, no, we did not take any drugs. So we asked them any other drug-like formulations or some supplements that you have been consuming, something like that. So at that point, even I was unaware that herbal medicines can cause so much of liver injury. I did not know. And like every doctor, and even most doctors now, at that time, I was also at the opinion that herbal medicines are fine as they're safe. They don't do anything.
Can I ask you around what time was this? Which year?
This is 2016 end of 2016, beginning of 2017.
Okay.
And at that point, these people started thinking back and telling us, yeah, we started this particular supplement about a month back, or I have been on this supplement for about 3 months. But this is not a drug. This is a natural supplement that our other doctors have given, and we are continuing it with our whatever medicines that we are taking. So we asked them to bring those supplements to us. So we retrieved them. And we found out most of them were Ayurvedic formulations. And most of them were traditional formulations, and some of them were proprietary formulations, the company made ones. And we subjected that to analysis, toxicology and analysis, and found out that a lot of them were contaminated, some of them were adulterated, and some of them actually had well-known liver toxic herbs in them. For example, giloy or turmeric or ashwagandha, these are all present in those formulations. And a lot of them are multi-herbal formulations. So you have a single capsule having turmeric with giloy, with ashwagandha and whatnot. So it's all of those causing problems of liver damage in these patients. And some of them even take liquid formulations. So these liquid formulations contain alcohol. So we have asavas and arishtams in Ayurveda, and that can actually cause alcoholic liver injury because they contain alcohol, up to 10 to 12% alcohol, those medicines. So that is why the biopsy was showing a lot of findings together. So that is when we found out that, this is something important. A lot of people with non-identifiable causes of liver injury, the liver injury is attributable to these herbal medications. And they were taking these herbal medications for a variety of issues and not liver related. They were taking it for maybe diabetes control or improving appetite or improving weight or just for some gas trouble and things like that. Non-specific complaints, they were taking these. And there is no evidence that these actually work for any of those. So this was like an avoidable health burden. Avoidable disease burden, if you ask me. So we collected all the data from these patients, and we made a beautiful paper on it. And I presented this paper at the American Association of Study of Liver Diseases annual conference the next year. 2017. And it won the Best Abstract Award there. After which I published this paper in the Indian Journal of Gastroenterology. And there was an editorial written on it by Professor Harshad Devarbavi, who is actually one of the biggest names in publications on drug-induced liver injury from India. So he works on conventional prescription drugs.
Where does he work?
He works at St. John's Medical College in Bangalore, where I studied MBBS. But he came in after I left. And he works in a lot of these prescription medicines. But this was the first time somebody was actually showing that, a complement and alternative medicine specific to the Indian subcontinent can actually cause harm, even leading to liver failure and death. So there was a large number of patients who actually died in our series that we published. And that was the first time I was exposed to this whole aspect of alternative medicine causing liver injuries and liver failure and liver death. Not only in adults, but even in children. So this became something important for me. So the whole alcohol, liver disease and research prospects and everything, it just took a back step. And this came as one of the most important research areas that I still work on.
Nice. So one question I have here is, we've had Ayurveda in India for so many years. Ayurveda and all other alternative medicines, they've been in the subcontinent for so many years. Why is it only now that we're hearing about all this toxicology?
I think this is one of the most important questions that I really want to answer. If we look at complement and alternative medicine per se, it's not just in India, it's a global phenomenon. So you have the Kampo medicine in Japan, you have traditional Chinese medicine in China, you have a huge nutraceutical and herbal and dietary supplement industry in the US and Europe, and even Ayurveda is there. So there have been a lot of reports published, isolated anecdotal reports of, small series and small reports of patients getting adversely affected because of Ayurvedic formulations or herbal formulations, generally speaking. Heavy metal contamination, lead poisoning, stuff like that. But when we look at our practice here in India, a lot of people, including, a majority of doctors, including me, I was not aware that this was something that we need to ask in the history. So if you don't ask for it, the patients will not tell you. So the whole answers lie within the patient. The whole history is so important. So if I had not gone back, if my pathologist had not told me at that time, please go back and ask for more drug history. And at some point, I never thought about asking about drugs, supplements, not just drugs, but supplements and other things that you've been having. They would not have ever told me, because even patients think that herbal means natural and safe. So they won't disclose it. So that is why a lot of patients, I'm sure there are isolated case reports happening from India before I publish this, but this large scale series where we could very clear cut link the herbal drugs to liver injury and the toxicology was never done before. Once this came out, the whole practice of clinical history taking in the country changed. Now so many people are reporting on it. Now we have a huge Asia Pacific Association of Study of Liver Disease guidelines on how to manage Ayush liver injury. So we call it as Ayush liver injury now, which is a legit term now. And this is coined by the Asia Pacific Association of Study of Liver Disease, APASL. And this happened after my work came in.
This really scares me. I feel like so I always call out people who are doing just fear mongering for the sake of fear mongering, and usually those people never cite evidence for whatever they're saying. They're just they're just scaring people through their content because such content does really well.
Yeah.
But here, when we have actual evidence showing us that, something like this, something we thought was safe and natural and benign, is actually so dangerous. It can cause so much
Yes.
damage to your body. Like I'm so surprised. Like, and I see the visceral reactions on Twitter sometimes. I'm surprised that people don't believe or trust something that actually has evidence and instead trust all these influencers just fear mongering without any evidence. Do you have any thoughts on that? Why do you think?
I think it's everything to do with the confirmation bias. So, for example, even in the doctor circles, I'm not going to go talk about common people at all. I'm not going to talk about non-medical people. I'm going to talk about medical people. So, I have colleagues who are big fans of Ayurvedic treatments. At some point, they even prescribed Ayurvedic medicines along with modern medicines for their patients. So the whole aspect is that, and I have a lot of modern medicine practitioners coming and telling me that, just calm down a bit on it. Let's not drag it further, stuff like that. But instead of actually looking at what evidence we are presenting. And I found out that, see, it's all about how the upbringing was. For example, a surgeon that I met, his grandfather was an Ayurvedic practitioner.
Right.
So if I say that Ayurveda is a pseudoscience, it doesn't work, and there are actual therapies that can harm you, it makes whatever his grandfather was standing for obsolete, which does not look nice. So he'll defend it. And there are a lot of people who have been following Ayurvedic advice based on maybe their family doctor would be an Ayurved, or their grandmother, or their mother, or their parents would be practicing Ayurveda, or would be actually advising them on Ayurvedic practice and principles. So when somebody invalidates all of that, it becomes a personal attack on them.
Right.
So that is why they come with all these arguments which do not refute the central point, but then go about everywhere else.
Right.
And there's another group of people who does this. I mean, directly come attacking without giving any evidence. And I think a lot of them are, they don't think from a scientific perspective. They think from a nationalistic perspective or a cultural perspective. Because when somebody says that Ayurveda is all bogus, that means the whole Indian traditional system of medicine was bogus.
Yeah.
And that doesn't look good to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So Ayurveda is the gift of India to the world, and it's a science of life. So I'm saying it's a pseudoscience of life, and I'm saying that the gift is actually going to harm people. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I would also feel terribly sad and angry about it. And of course, the guys who practice Ayurveda, practitioners, industry guys, the stakeholders, they would definitely come attacking because it's their businesses that is getting hurt.
Right. For most people, I'm sure most of my audience might already be aware of things we're talking about. But again, a lot of other people who are watching the video right now, they might have heard stories, or maybe they might have the experience of someone in their family, or maybe even themselves. They might have had some disease or illness for which no modern medicine drug worked. They'll go to doctor after doctor and nothing seems to work. And then they go to an Ayurveda or homeopathy or some alternative medicine practitioner, and it works for them, and their illness is gone, never to come back again. And so because of all these, the image of alternative medicine that they have in their minds is always something very positive. They'll think very positively of all this, of alternative medicine in general. And now they see you going completely in the opposite direction, like telling them something they've never heard before. So My question is, like, why should someone like that even believe you?
This is the strongest contender in communicating evidence-based medicine or science-based medicine is actually personal experience, and nothing can actually break it. So somebody has a good personal experience on a particular practice. It's very difficult for us to break that because that person has actually gotten better with that. But almost all of them who gets better with alternative medicine would have gotten better even without alternative medicine given the time. So I'll tell you a very classical example which a lot of Ayurveds have been sending me as private DMs on my Twitter, saying that you're talking about a lot of alternative medicine harming. Now you see this particular news that has come up, and this is going to break all your whatever you are preaching about. And I saw, and this was about this doctor in the Gulf, who is a very famous personality who runs a big chain of hospitals here in Cochin also, and also in the Gulf, in the Middle East. And she had this condition called psoriatic arthritis. Okay. So you have psoriasis, which is a skin disease, and when it gets really severe, so she has the palmoplantar variant, where the hands and feet get affected, and that can also affect your wrists, the joints. So that becomes psoriatic arthritis, and it's a very I would call it as a really difficult disease. For the patient and also for the doctor to manage, because it has waxing and waning periods. So you have good days and you have bad days, and it's a chronic disease. It's a chronic inflammatory disease which requires medical management throughout, and some people grow out of it at some point. It goes into remission, never to come back. So what she did was, like you exactly said, she took up a lot of modern medicine for a long period of time, for months and years, and she had initial good improvement. Then they had bad days, good days, bad days. So she was getting impatient, and then she tried Ayurveda. And once the Ayurveda was started, and that was started at this place called Kottakkal, which is actually one of the big names in Ayurveda industries in the country. It's in Kerala. Once medicines and some detoxification processes were started from Kottakkal, she claims that within the next few months, the whole thing got cured. Right? So she was on modern medicines all this while. She did not stop that. There is no claim where she says that I have stopped modern medicines and I have been only on herbal medicines and detoxification, and that has improved me. No. She's added that. So this is that integrative medicine fraud that we keep talking about. So the modern medicine has acted in due course of time, or the disease has completely waned off in due course of time into remission. And that person, even though she's a doctor, she has wrongly attributed that improvement to whatever was done last. So that Ayurveda came in last, and she thought that actually improved her. And this is the story with every person who experiences anything good with alternative medicine. Either it was a self-limiting disease that is supposed to go away, or you were impatient and did everything, and when the time for that disease was to go into remission, it went into remission. Or you have been using ideal treatments along with whatever you have been using as an alternative practice. So that is the reason why personal or anecdotal experiences don't matter. You don't even have to look at it from a scientific perspective. You don't even have to respond to such arguments from a scientific perspective.
Right. So just to sum up what you were saying, these alternative medicines probably or almost definitely did not have any effect. Their disease or their improvement in their condition was because of some other factor, maybe time or maybe something else they were taking, or
a natural history of the disease.
So at this point, I want to ask you, what is the importance of evidence? Why should someone look for evidence before deciding if a drug actually, helps you with that disease?
The whole aspect of medical care is that you have to treat all your patients the same way. So if I have a person sitting in the United States with hepatitis B infection, and I have a person sitting here with me in Kerala with hepatitis B infection, without evidence and with only observational data at hand, I would be treating this patient in front of me with herbs and yoga and whatnot. And the person in United States might be getting another set of treatments. But we know that how a disease starts, develops, and progresses. So that is the whole aspect of treatment. So you know where to target it. So because we have been studying that disease, and because we know how the disease progresses or the natural state of the disease, we are able to find ways to tackle it at some point. And that is where evidence-based treatments come. So for example, the way to treat hepatitis B is to give an antiviral. So you have to make sure that the virus does not replicate, or it goes into very low levels of replication, or the person actually gets cured at some point with the virus. And only an antiviral can do that. So how do we know these antivirals work? Because we have evidence to show that the antivirals actually kills the virus, because we know how the virus manifests the disease in the body.
Okay.
So because of that, the person sitting in US or a person sitting in the Europe gets treated with tenofovir alphenamide, which is the latest antiviral for hepatitis B, and the person sitting here in front of me also gets treated the same way. So this is right to health for all. So every person deserves the right treatment, and they don't deserve observation-based treatment or anecdotal treatments. Because somebody who follows the right scientific method with evidence at hand may be treating that patient actually the way that person needs to be treated in USA. And if we don't follow that evidence here, we're actually we're not giving the right opportunity for our patients to improve. So evidence is important to justify our treatments, and also to justify the fact that patients deserve the right treatment.
Right.
This is why we need to study it. And this is where alternative medicine falls flat. One of the biggest problems, I would say, or challenges, I would say, with alternative medicine is that they are not ready to get into that boxing ring where we look at evidence. Because when you start looking at evidence from alternative medicine point of view, see, I'm sure we might find something new out of it. I'm not saying that there will not be anything, but the whole aspect of principles of alternative medicine, when you test it from an evidence point of view, they fail. You cannot test it. So that is why they always refuse peer review. That is one of the biggest problems with alternative medicine.
Right.
And this is why evidence or science-based medicine is the real medicine, and that is alternate.
And just to add to everything you said, and this is how I respond to this question about why is evidence important. I think it's because if you want to make a claim about how things work in the real world, say if you do A, you will get B. If you want to make a claim like that, which is basically all claims in medicine, such a claim about reality can only work or can only be true if there is evidence backing it up.
Exactly.
So if you want to make any claim about reality, not only medicine, anything about, say, if it's something about astrology or future prediction or some aspect of the architecture of your house, if you have a door over here facing the north, such things. Those are all claims about reality. If they don't have evidence behind them, then they're meaningless.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Same, and I think evidence is most important in healthcare.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't treat people the way you feel like treating them.
Yeah.
You have to follow a protocol so that everybody gets treated the same way.
So we spoke a bit about your Twitter handle. And by the way, guys, please follow him for sure. The Liver DR on Twitter. That's his handle. I think it's the biggest account in India on Med Twitter.
Yeah, it
right?
is. It is.
Yeah. So please do follow him because he posts a lot of evidence, the actual study, the actual research outcomes of testing all these medicines. He does that. So what I want to ask you is, what was your motivation behind, going on Twitter to communicate this information?
Yeah, I mean, so when I started off working on this in 2016, 2017, 2018.
That's when you first got on Twitter.
No, I got on Twitter actually much later.
Okay.
So when I started working on this aspect of alternative medicine industry and other researches that I do, I present at meetings, I present at conferences, and I travel and present at very influential conferences, and people appreciate it, and that it ends there, right? So when I had a very bitter experience with a particular herbal and dietary supplement company known as Herbalife. So I was the first person to publish a report on the death of a young woman due to Herbalife-related liver injury. And I was not the only one. Before me, there were about 55 cases already published from other parts of the world. And I was the first to publish on that from Asia Pacific. So what we did was we published that in the Journal of Clinical and Experimental Hepatology, which is actually an official journal of the Indian National Association for Study of Liver, INASL. Okay. We published that, and within 9 months, Herbalife came after me, started legal battles, flexing their legal muscle. And ultimately, even though I did not bow down to that, the journal and the editorial board and the publisher got really scared about the whole prospect of fighting Herbalife head-on, taking Herbalife head-on in the courts, because it's going to cost them a lot of money. So they didn't want to do that. So they took the easy way out, and they removed my paper from the journal. So this was quite, that was the first time I was facing that kind of a heat because of my publication. Okay. And Herbalife made sure that none of the publications presence, none of that existed anywhere in any online sources. They took it out from everywhere, including my own private page on ResearchGate. So they took it out from there also, because they just keep serving people strange and strong-worded legal notices, and they don't want to fight. I was ready to fight them in court, and I would have definitely won also, because the patient died, but the husband was all with me, and he wanted to take it up. But then at some point, because the journal and all those people were not supporting me, the whole thing just died down, and they removed the paper. So I was just sitting on it. One fine day, the pandemic came in, and I was just looking through. I just joined Twitter in 2019, middle part of 2019. They all say that you actually joined Twitter once, and then you quit Twitter, and then you join back again, and then you see that it's working out well. So I did that actually. And sometime during, I think, September 2019, I came back on Twitter again, and that was when all the COVID drama was coming up. And I saw this particular tweet by another doctor who was actually a nutrition specialist, where he is mentioning that he's seeing a lot of people with herbal and dietary supplement-induced liver injury. So then I tweeted about my experience on this, and about how the herbal and dietary supplement industry, Herbalife specifically, came after me and took down that important document. And that actually clicked with the Twitter crowd. So that was one of my first viral tweets, where the Retraction Watch, which is one of the biggest, I think it's a public funded organization by the NPR, they wrote about my ordeal on their blog, on the website, the Retraction Watch. And scientific integrity specialist, her name is Professor Elizabeth Bick. She wrote about it on her integrity blog, about how I was the victim of money versus science power struggle. And that is when people started, I knew that Twitter is something that you can use to make people aware of a lot of things that they have no idea about. Like me, I never knew about herbal and dietary supplements or Ayurveda causing liver injury, but I had 3 years of experience on it, and I knew that none of these people knew about it. So I started talking about that on Twitter initially, after this huge thing came up. And I knew that people have the right to know about your research. It's not just that you do some research, you publish in a journal, and you talk about it in a conference, and you go back and sleep at home. This is for the people. And all of that I was doing was actually of public health concern. It was nothing to do with pure sciences that only doctors need to know. This was something that public needed to know. So I used Twitter in a simplified manner to talk about my research and my works and how that impacts public health. And that is when this whole episode on Twitter started. So initially the first few months were slow. But then within a year, I started seeing a lot of organic growth, because a lot of tweets that I was doing was challenging. It was completely trashing all the dogmas, challenging every cultural and traditional beliefs that people were having. Exactly. Something as simple as sugarcane juice does not reduce jaundice.
Yeah.
That's something that people commonly talk about. They have jaundice, please drink sugarcane juice, your jaundice will go away. People don't even know that jaundice is actually not a disease. It is a symptom and sign of an underlying disease. People think that my jaundice is cured. So you don't say jaundice is cured. Your jaundice went away because your disease was cured, which was causing the jaundice. So such simple things, I understood that people did not know. So this was the right venue for me to talk about it. So that is how the whole Twitter episode and the whole liver doc profile coming into the picture came in. Initially, my handle was not called as the liver doc. It was my name, Dr. Abby Phillips. And when I started talking about Ayurveda, the only thing I was getting was complete trash talk about religion. So they would call me a rice bag. They would call me a Christian missionary. They would put up videos. They still do it. They put up videos of priests running around and healing people in churches and things like that as a response to my scientific tweet. And that was completely derailing the whole aspect of what I was trying to communicate. So I changed my handle from Dr. Abby Phillips to the Liver Doc. And that is how the Liver Doc thing came in. So I was never known as Liver Doc from the start. I changed it so that I can, somehow curb the wrath from these radical guys on Twitter.
Should also say one thing at this point. So we're going to include everything you said about the legal battle you faced in this video. So if the video gets taken down, you know exactly why.
I don't think they will take it down, the video. You know why? Because they have experienced the Streisand Effect already once. So I don't think they should. I don't think they should even take it down. Everybody knows about it. It's an open secret what these companies do.
So the Streisand Effect, for those of you who want to know, is when you try to hide something or suppress something, that shines light on it, and that goes around that becomes bigger than it otherwise would have.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I want to ask you. How big is this problem? Because if these medicines are as harmful as you say, how much does it affect the public? How far and wide is this problem? How prevalent is this problem?
So if you look at data from the Western countries and from Southeast Asia and from the Indian subcontinent, it's all different. If you look at my studies, I found out that in people without any underlying liver disease, that is the non-chronic liver disease group, the use of alternative medicine was at some point in the last year when we spoke to them was about 60%. 60% of them used some form of alternative medicine within the last year that they were on other medications also. When we looked at in patients with underlying liver disease, that went up to almost 70 to 75%. So a lot of people use complement alternative medicine on the side. And these numbers are actually much higher in Southeast Asian countries like China because they have already integrated that in their healthcare system, and also in Korea. And there it can go up to about 80%. Now this is the usage of these therapies. And what we found out that in our studies is that the people who actually use it, more than 1/3 of them develop some sort of adverse event. In our cases, it was liver injury. And the actual incidence and prevalence data from specific countries do not exist. So we have region-wise data that is from my studies and the further studies that I have actually done on it. We have almost 6 to 7 original papers on it. We have seen that from anywhere from 25 to 33% of people on alternative medicines develop some sort of adverse event, most commonly liver injury, in our series. And I think these numbers are much, much higher because a lot of these cases go undetected. Because there is this aspect of, diagnosing something as idiopathic when you don't find a cause. So we have a lot of causes for idiopathic jaundice, a lot of patients with idiopathic jaundice, a lot of patients with idiopathic hepatitis. Causes are unknown. So a lot of patients are stamped that way, or they are given some diagnosis which are just symptom-based. Jaundice and hepatitis of unknown cause, like that. And I'm sure a lot of these patients were, or at some point were on these complement alternative medicines, and a lot of doctors failed to detect them. So these numbers are much higher. Now, since we have a government program that is actually promoting and advertising complement alternative medicine use in daily life, I think these numbers will go higher and higher. We saw this during COVID. When I started working in 2016, and mine is a referral center for management of herbal liver injuries. Other hospitals refer patients to me to take care of them because we have expertise in managing them. And a lot of these patients either die or we emergency post them for liver transplantation. So that is what happens ultimately. But about 50 to 60% of them do recover with good supportive care. So we are a referral center for these cases. And I have not seen the numbers of cases that I saw after COVID started. So from 2016 to 2019, I had no idea that a herb called giloy was so damaging. And in 2019 to 2022, we found almost, not just our publications, there were publications from India that actually showed that close to 300 patients were reported to have giloy liver injury because they were consuming giloy as a COVID preventive. So the whole thing just exploded during the COVID time. And that is when we started publishing specifically on specific herbs also. So initially it was just Ayurveda herbals generally, but now we have large series on specific herbs causing toxicity. So this has happened because the promotion has increased. And I'm sure this is going to go much, much higher. And we are going to have a lot more cases being detected and unnecessary cases being manufactured because of unnecessary promotion and use of alternative medicines. And I'm sure if somebody goes and looks at their herbal supplement now, whoever is watching this, just look at the ingredients and I'm sure giloy will be there. And if it is there, please be cautious.
Yeah. Now, speaking of specific herbs, giloy, turmeric, I think ashwagandha, aloe vera, these are very popular herbs.
Standard, large series have been published on these.
Are all of these dangerous?
So there is something, I think this is an important point because there is something known as, a classical example is a lot of people consume alcohol. And some consume a lot of alcohol, but they don't develop cirrhosis or liver disease. So people say, what the hell? Same thing here. Because in alcoholic liver disease, you should have some predisposition first. So there are some people who are maybe overweight or obese, they have diabetes, they have additional risk factors that increase the chances of developing a liver disease in the presence of alcohol. So if you have no alcohol in that equation, they would not develop liver disease at all. And there are some people who are genetically protected from alcoholic liver injury. For example, there is this group, especially in the Asian continent, in China, where they have certain specific genes which make them slow metabolizers of alcohol, which means they develop alcohol toxicity with very small amounts. So this is known as, initially it was known as Oriental flushing syndrome, because those who consumed that became red flushed. And that has now changed to alcohol flush syndrome. And because of that, they can't consume a lot of alcohol and they're protected from alcoholic liver injury. So there are conditions like that. Similarly, in herbal liver injury, we have certain genes that dictate your risk of developing liver injury. For example, take the example of green tea extract. So there is a gene called HLA-B1 and a particular locus, a particular part of the gene, if it has some genetic change. I'm just simplifying it for the people, not going into much details on what mutation and all. But if that particular gene is mutated to a particular position, those who have that particular mutation develops more liver injury due to green tea extract. And not many people will develop green tea extract related liver injury if they don't have that particular mutation. Similarly, even ashwagandha and turmeric may have such associations, which we will definitely identify as the studies unravel in the future. And most of these are actually, some of them are dose dependent, some of them are not dose dependent. So if you take the classical example of paracetamol, you take paracetamol beyond a particular limit per day, you'll develop a liver injury or liver failure. If you take it within recommended doses, it is the safest medicine ever. And if you look at a painkiller, for example, say diclofenac, it can harm you with a single dose. You don't need to take diclofenac for this many duration or this much dose to cause any harm. It can happen with a single dose. So we have had people with severe liver injury or liver or kidney failure taking single dose of diclofenac and coming. So that is dose non-dependent. Similarly, most of these herbal formulations are dose non-dependent. So they are dangerous potentially, but that doesn't mean everybody can develop a liver injury or a kidney injury or an adverse event because of it. But the whole idea is that since there are no actual benefits identified in using these herbs, and there are actual risks which are published, why do you want to use them? Because you are using that without any known benefits, but calling in some sort of adverse event. So that is why we should stay away from such untested, non-evidence-based products.
Right. And when it comes to things like paracetamol or such dose-dependent things, we know the exact limit where the safety is actually there. And for these herbal drugs, we don't know those limits because no safety testing has been done.
We don't know
we don't
dosing.
even,
we don't know
dose
dosing.
independence or dependence, we don't know.
So for example, take the example of turmeric. So many studies have been done on it, hundreds of studies on it. But I'm going to ask somebody, please tell me the dose of turmeric that will help boost your immune system or prevent a viral infection. And what is the adult dose? What is the pediatric dose? They have no answer. But tell me the dose of turmeric that can actually help you reduce your diabetes or improve your diabetes condition in adults and in children. No answer to it. But tell me the dose of metformin or glimepiride, which are anti-diabetic medications, in adults and children. We have answers to that. So there is no evidence on not only dosing but duration and also safety. But with drugs like paracetamol, which is a classical example which everyone takes. I'm sorry I'm talking about paracetamol all the time, but this is what people always relate with when they talk about modern medicine versus alternative medicine. We have data even in cirrhosis patients. So somebody who has underlying liver disease can take paracetamol up to 2 grams per day for 2 to 3 days. It's safe. It's known and it's already been published. So we have data even in at-risk populations. But look at alternative medicines. You look at Brahmi or look at Chyawanprash or look at, these are not medicines per se, but still people use them. Or these Gugulu kashayas that people use to improve memory and things like that. You ask them about dose, duration and use in specific populations, general as well as sick populations or special populations like the elderly or pregnancy. Absolutely no data on it.
So one question now I have is, if there are so many harmful effects and it's also almost definitely ineffective as a medicine, it's unsafe to consume also. Given all this, why are most of these still available in the market?
Because these are not marketed as medicines. These are marketed as health supplements or nutritional supplements. They don't enter the domain of medicine, right? They are not drugs, because you don't for somebody to have somebody to call something a drug, it should be an isolated compound which has specific effects at the cellular, molecular, cellular, tissue, organ level in the body. And you should know how that drug gets metabolized, how it gets out of the body, at what dose it is effective, at what dose it is unsafe. So when all of that come in, you call it as a drug or a medicine. These are nothing. These are not drugs or medicines. People will say Ayurvedic doctor and Ayurvedic medicine. Both are actually misnomers. There is no Ayurvedic doctor and there is no Ayurvedic medicine. Because you don't actually have any evidence to use those terms interlinked.
And when it's marketed as a diet supplement, they don't do the same level of safety testing.
You don't need to. Because dietary supplements and nutritional supplements or food supplements do not require the rigor that we need for drugs in clinical trials. So they escape it. They just need a certificate of good manufacturing practices from the alternative medicine authorities or industrial authorities, whoever that is, and they can directly market it. Like for example, I'm going to give a very classical example from modern medicine. So there was this big drug which was made by Intercept Pharma, huge American company, called as obeticholic acid. So it was at one point one of the most promising new drugs in development for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Huge numbers of studies done, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, pharmacovigilance studies, everything done. They found out that this drug actually reduces the fibrosis, that is the scarring in fatty liver disease. It reduces the fat content in the liver, and it reduces the inflammation because of the fat, which is excellent, right? This is what we want. But they also found out that the people who took the drug at that particular dose, which provides that benefit, they started developing complications, adverse events. For example, one of the biggest complications was severe itching. We call it as pruritus. The US FDA said this drug cannot be marketed. As simple as that. See, it's giving you so much of benefits on the side, but still it was harming a group of patients. So in that studies that they have done, somewhere between 21 to 40% of people were getting affected with some with serious side effects and some with these annoying side effects. And that made them say that this drug is not useful. That is what modern medicine is. But you look at a drug like, I'm not calling it a drug, but look at a supplement like Chyawanprash or a Giloy base formulation. Somebody puts it up in a newspaper saying that it is going to treat your COVID, and people jump running to it. I mean, it's just crazy how people think. I cannot get my head around it.
What should an official body like the US FDA here in India, what should a body or the government, what are they doing about it?
So there are two ways to looking at it. One is to regulate and one is to promote. Right. So we regulate practices which we are unsure of, and we promote practices which we are very sure of. For example, vaccines. Vaccines definitely reduced COVID-related morbidity and mortality. So you promote it. That is why government promoted it extensively, and we had one of the biggest vaccination drives here. Now look at something like Coronel, which is manufactured by Patanjali. They had one lame study on very few number of patients, which did not even look at actual endpoints from a clinical point of view, but they used that to promote it. Now, as a regulatory body, what you should have been doing is that you have to tell people that, this has been promoted for COVID, but it is based on very low levels of evidence, and there is upcoming data that one of the components in that particular herbal drug, which is Giloy, can actually cause immune-mediated liver damage. And people with immune-mediated disorders or autoimmune diseases or diabetes or thyroid disease must stay away from that particular product because that can harm you. This is what happens in a better world. This is what US FDA does. The US government has a National Institute for Complementary and Alternative Medicine Therapies, where they actually tell people that harms and benefits of a particular herb. So if you go to the website, they'll actually say that, this particular herb, for example, turmeric, has been shown to have a lot of these side effects. So please be cautious. Since we don't have actual benefits to promote it, if you are going to consume turmeric for some reason that you need to, please be aware of this problem. That stuff does not happen in India. So if I say that turmeric causes liver injury and people should be aware of it, or Giloy causes immune-mediated liver injury and people with autoimmune diseases must stay away from it, I get beaten black and blue digitally. I'm sure they'll beat me up also if they see me in person. So the whole aspect, the whole government machinery is completely living inside a bubble of confirmational biases. It's fully packed into a bubble of confirmation bias. So when I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister's office, saying that, I wrote a letter actually to the Prime Minister's grievance cell, saying that, and I put it up on Twitter also, saying that we have a problem with Giloy. Not just me, multiple institutes all over India, close to 200 patients have been reported to have Giloy-related immune-mediated liver injury. Please, along with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and Ayush Ministry, make a joint statement saying that at least people with immune-related disorders stay away from it, from this particular herb. They sent my letter to a homeopath who sent back a reply saying that this has been used since many, many years and has been described in text 2000 years ago, so it's fine. Even when I gave them the data on it. Now the same Prime Minister's grievance cell, when an Ayurveda wrote a letter to that same cell saying that there is this hepatologist in Kerala who's defaming Ayurveda and calling it a pseudoscience, they forwarded that letter to the Ayush Ministry, to the National Medical Council, which is the national level apex body for medical doctors, who forwarded that to my medical council here, who forwarded that to the state Ayush Ministry, and everyone started investigating me. So, I mean, you can see how this is, how things are going here. And without a proper understanding of what the science is, and I think we actually need policymakers who are scientifically temperamental. You know, I mean, there are a lot of ministers and people in power positions who know about this, but we need more of such people to actually take this forward, because this is all going to become a big public health concern sometime in the future.
And one thing I've noticed, and one thing I'm really sad about, is that we need communicators like you, yourself, and we need maybe content from me to tell people about, hey, these are the things that may be harmful to you. These are myths that intrude into your life or invade into your life, and these are not true, and here's why. We shouldn't even have to say this. The government, we're paying taxes to the government, and they should ideally do all this research and regulate what actually goes to the citizens.
Exactly.
And instead we get the Ayush Ministry doing all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it from the Ayush Ministry's point of view, it was made solely for the purpose of promoting the traditional medicine and cultural aspects of it. And they're doing it. They're doing a very good job at it, but at the cost of public health.
Yeah.
So when you are not caring about your own citizens and you want to promote your businesses within domestic and international circles, what does that actually make you? You know, I mean, the whole ministry is run on citizens' taxes.
Yeah.
It is run on public funds. Everything that they do. If one of those doctors who, I mean, when I was on Facebook a long time ago, I stopped being on Facebook because it was just an extension of the cesspool of what WhatsApp was. Completely horrendous interactions there, so I quit. And a lot of Ayurveds and homeopaths started doxing my family on Facebook, so I quit completely. And when I was on Facebook at that time, I used to see these Ayurveda practitioners going to Germany and the guys who are working with the CCRAS, the Central Council for Research in Ayurvedic Sciences, which is supposedly the research body for Ayurveda under Ayush Ministry. Them traveling to Germany and presenting some vague paper here and there, and that's all from the public money. So their travel expenses, everything is, the public is paying for it. And what are they showing for that to the public? I mean, we definitely need something out of it which benefits us. And that has never been, so this has started from 2014, the Ayush Ministry. Tell me a single properly evidence-based, studied, validated and replicated formulation from our traditional medicine point of view that has been put to use for the public or for a particular disease or for a particular symptom even by the Ayush Ministry. There is not a single one. And they are getting funds at the level of 3,000 crores, almost every budget. And this is what is painful, because you can actually use that money to do real science.
Yeah.
Improve infrastructure, build better medical colleges, build better PHCs so that real doctors can go actually work at those PHCs with comfort. But instead of that, this is spent on doing studies on yoga and turmeric and pepper and whatnot. And this is just crazy.
Yeah. And to add to that, they can subsidize the existing care.
Yes.
If it's unaffordable to anyone, then they can make use of the fact that it's subsidized somewhere, and
they can do so many things with that money. My goodness. I mean, this is the only thing that actually saddens me. It's not the bullying or harassment that happens. I mean, people are not well aware of what we are actually talking about, but at one point they will be in the future. I may not be there, but they will be aware of what is happening, what was happening. But the whole aspect is that so much of these resources are wasted on nothing. So there was this study which was funded by the ICMR in 2019, where they did some kind of Vedic yajna to improve to reduce the death rate of critically ill patients in the ICU. And I still remember that particular news came out in Times of India, and this was in 2019, and they said that we will publish the data in 2 months. It's 2023. I don't know where that yajna and that money went to. I think it's gone like Hawan, all that money.
So yeah, that's something I want to ask you about. I think I watched a video you did in 2021. I don't remember exactly what, but I remember you mentioning something about safety testing of the safety research on some Ayurvedic formulation has not been done yet. And that was in 2021, almost exactly 2 years ago. Since then, has any of it been done on anything else? Have you heard of any safety testing that has been done? Because we keep hearing about the research that Ayush Ministry is going after funding, whatever. Yeah.
I'm actually laughing here, but this is actually serious stuff. So nothing has been done. But if you go look at the Ayush Ministry's portal on the CCRA's web portal, you can actually see a lot of these studies have been registered there. But none of them are actually published. And even if they are published, they are going to get published in some dubious low-level third-rate journal like Journal of Integrative Medicine or Journal of Yogic Knowledge or something like that, or the Tree of Knowledge and all that. And recently, they even published a paper in the Journal of Magical Thinking. There is a journal like that. And the publisher that publisher's name is also like that. And that was actually reported by newspapers also. So that is the stuff that they do. You take money and you do some vague work and you publish in some dubious journal and make it a news item. The newspaper will lap it up, all the social media, online media, everybody lap it up, and people think something great has happened. Absolutely nothing has happened. There is not a single drug. So there are some, I think this is very important because you mentioned that has something been done. So there are some proprietary drugs that has been designed by Ayush Ministry along with CCRAS with the help of other institutions, right? So they have these drugs for diabetes like BGR64 and stuff like that. But if you actually look at that, there is no validated or replicated proper peer-reviewed published data on these drugs. They have been directly marketed as something that the Ayush Ministry or the CCRS has identified as being something of value for the people. And a lot of people, and I think the Hindu has written about how dubious those studies were and how much of a fraudulent product this particular drug was. So you have a lot of drugs like that, where there is no actual research done, but it is marketed on the basis of fake claims that research has been done. So that is definitely there.
So what are your thoughts on integrated medicine? What is it for people who might want to know?
Yeah, so the whole aspect of I had a very nice debate with an integrative medicine specialist who is actually a neuropsychiatrist also from Chennai, and that has been published by the Hindu podcast. So, but I would like to add on to that what we discussed there. So, integrative medicine is basically it's a term that the alternative medicine industry has now slowly started using, because when you say that complementary medicine means you are adding something to something that is already a standard. So that is complementary. You complement it. Alternative medicine is when you do something, you move away from the standard and then you go for an alternative approach. So these things don't sound well with the crowd, right? So it's complementary and alternative. So it's not real stuff. So what they did, they brought in integrative medicine. So when it is integrative, it means that everything is working well. So you have Ayurveda with chemotherapy or homeopathy with anti-diabetes medicines and things like that. So this term has been specifically created by the alternative medicine industry as a smoke and mirrors approach to defraud the people. So you mix something with something that doesn't work with mix something that works and give undue credit to the things that don't work. So we have a very famous saying, and I get this off Twitter all the time. If you mix cow pie, which is cow dung, with apple pie, the apple pie does not taste better. The cow pie does not taste better, but the apple pie actually tastes worse. So that is integrative medicine. So that's a cow pie and apple pie happening. So you mix Ayurveda with a proper standard treatment, it's not the standard treatment improving. It's actually the patient probably worsening because of that add-on therapy.
Right.
Because integrative medicine has 3 big problems with it. One is that when you integrate an unknown and untested formulation or a practice into a known practice, there can be interactions which can either reduce the effectiveness of that real treatment, or it can cause toxicity of the real treatment. So for example, there are certain herbs which can actually increase the metabolism of certain drugs, and the effect of those drugs will reduce. And certain herbs which can reduce the metabolism of certain drugs, and you can actually have toxicity because of those drugs. So that is one very important aspect of integrative medicine. And second aspect is that people are being charged, or it costs them more when it is integrative medicine. And I'm not saying this blindly. There are really good meta-analysis works, systematic reviews that are published on integrative medicine in cancer especially, where they have shown that people who took integrative medicine died more, and the cost burden was much more at the cost of death. So this is what integrative medicine does. Now, people who promote integrative medicine, they would definitely not agree with me because it is money for them. So when I say that, take this pill metformin, which will cost you only maybe a few paise, maybe about 10 rupees a month. But I'm going to give you something more which will help you better, and I'll add this particular herbal formulation which will cost them maybe 250 rupees a month. So they'll think that these 2 things are working much better on them, but they'll end up with some herbal liver injury, and this is costing them more. The metformin alone can give them the same benefit without the herbal formulation. So integrative,
maybe even better benefit.
Maybe even better, because it can actually reduce the effectiveness of that. So when you look at integrative medicine, it is a very good way for hospitals and clinics to make money. And every integrative medicine program running in private hospitals is a money-making business. I'm sure none of them can ever produce any valid, solid evidence of integrative medicine being better than conventional or standardized care. This does not happen. Never.
I think one more thing that I want to ask you is, why do people have this mistrust of the pharma industry, of modern medicine, when they have a lot of trust on alternative?
I think this is a coin where we have to discuss both sides. So the whole aspect of mistrust in science and medical science stems from both the modern medicine practice and also from the alternative practice. So modern medical practice is not all pretty. I mean, I know personally what I do in my practice is to de-prescribe a lot. So I have patients coming in with, investigations worth tens of thousands of rupees, and drugs that one patient was actually taking 21 pills a day for various symptoms and problems. And this was written by a modern medicine practitioner. And I reduced that to 2 pills a day. That is all what she needed. So the whole aspect of unethical practice among the modern medicine community drives patients away from it. So if you have a compassionate, ethical way of dealing with patients, following the actual science-based evidentiary guidelines, you can get the trust better from them. But what is happening is exactly the opposite, because in India, the public hospitals are excellent. I mean, there are a lot of major central institutes and public hospitals, but if you look at it, a majority of the heavy lifting of specialized care is in the private sector. So if you want to have a liver transplant done in Kerala, private hospitals do it. Government hospitals don't do it. And what they can do with that particular patient is that they can charge them as they want. And they do it also. A lot of people get overcharged. A lot of people get overprescribed. And this is the truth that happens in modern medicine. And because of which patients' trust reduces in dealing with modern medicine practitioners. Now the alternative medicine guys know about this. They know it. So what they would do is, they would keep talking about it. So this becomes a sort of indoctrination among the public that modern medicine is only business and alternative medicine is anti-business, pro-people, and it will help you take care of things from the root cause, where they only prescribe a lot of medicines to treat your symptoms. It is exactly the opposite actually. Because root cause is what modern medicine actually treats. You know what you're treating. Alternative medicine treats only symptoms and what they feel they imagine to be is wrong with the patient. So the whole aspect of mistrust comes from both these. And I think if doctors are more communicative towards the patient from the outset, and discuss in detail about what their treatment plans are, and if at some point they are going to change the treatment, modify it, or boost the treatment, the patient should know why that is being done. And I do that in my practice. And I'm sorry to say that not all doctors are privileged like that to spend so much of time. I curb my practice to a few number of patients so that I can spend quality time. But a lot of doctors are burdened with many patients. They have to see 100 patients, 120 patients in the public sector, even in the private sector. So they don't have time to spend so much. So that gap in communication is been filled by these alternative medicine practitioners who communicate well, but treat utterly nonsense. And the patients don't actually identify with that wrong treatment because they have been communicating well. That rapport is there. And this again reduces the trust in actual healthcare.
There's also one more thing I've noticed. Most patients, and you can tell me how your experience with patients regarding this. Most patients are not interested in what course of treatment you want to go, or what is the logic you're following for how you're going to treat the patient. They just have some inconvenience or illness and they want to get better. That's all they care about. They don't care about how you do it specifically.
That's true.
What are your thoughts based on your experience on this?
So this is an important aspect from the psychology of the patient. So some patients approach a doctor. So for example, imagine a person has hepatitis C, virus infection, and a chronic liver disease. So they want to get cured from it. So there was a time when we could not cure hepatitis C because the medicines available were not that effective. But now we have excellent direct-acting antivirals. So if somebody comes and asks me now, can I get cured of hepatitis C? I'll say, yes, you can get cured of hepatitis C. But you cannot get cured from that chronic liver disease that you already have because of hepatitis C. That we need to follow you up for life. Because even after clearing the hepatitis C virus, even though the risk of progression of your disease is drastically reduced, you may still have to face some adverse events related to that chronic liver disease, which we will have to follow you up. So when you are truthful that way, patients accept it and they stick on to the plan. Now, imagine another doctor hears that and he says that, what cure? You are not going to get cured. You are already having chronic liver disease. You are going to be under me. We have to follow up. We have to take this medicine. Sometimes you even have to go for a liver transplant at some point. So when you say that becomes a negative impact on that patient. Now the same patient goes to an Ayurveda. Now he knows that the modern medicine has actually cleared the virus. And you just need to follow this patient up. There are smart Ayurveds like that. And there are ones who just talk from ignorance. But what they would do is that they'll say that, no, we'll see. I mean, you have a chronic disease, but we will see what we can do best for you. Please take these, and follow at this point. Whatever it is, I am there for you. See, that changes the whole perspective. So the whole aspect of patients coming in and wanting something may not be the actual thing that they need to hear. You have to take the conversation around it and tell them the stuff they actually need to hear but not want to hear.
I think medical schools and medical colleges should teach this interpersonal interaction with two doctors.
Oh, they don't
That's
do
very
that.
important.
They don't do that. I mean, I don't know about now. Oh, now they are doing Ayush internship. So maybe they'll find some interactions there, how they deal with patients.
Yeah.
But in my time, it was just studying the subject and passing. And the whole interaction started, the real interaction started after I started practicing my super specialty. I was thrust into that aspect of really understanding the value of talking to patients from being inside the patient's shoes or inside the family shoes and understanding that impact. Because there is no point in just talking to them about facts. The fact is that a lot of advanced cirrhosis patients will either die or they need a transplant. But there is also a possibility that you can improve the life expectancy of such patients to a large extent by a lot of medical methods. And this is the fact. So that is the only stuff they need to hear, because a happy patient is a healthy patient. So this is what I do. So you can't be just blunt, like how science is very blunt, but you cannot be blunt as a person, because ultimately you are not treating a customer or a client. You are treating a person who has come with a disease. And the worst aspect is that the whole healthcare system gets benefited from a disease and illness and sickness, which is quite a sad thing. I mean, that's the business of it, right? And because they're sick and ill, I think the whole aspect of improving how a patient accepts that particular thought process or management from a doctor all depends on how you communicate and how much you are compassionate with that particular person. This works. If every modern medicine doctor can do this to some extent, the alternative medicine industry will be choked. They'll choke.
Right.
Yeah.
And one thing that I'd like to say regarding this about the criticism of modern medicine and the criticism of alternative medicine is that when you criticize alternative medicine, you're criticizing the effectiveness or the safety of the drug, and that should take much greater precedence than the availability or the affordability of the drug, which is what we criticize modern medicine for.
Yes, exactly. So somebody, when I say that, this Ayurvedic formulation containing turmeric is going to harm your liver, a very common response I get is that, as if allopathy, I mean, that's not the right term, as if allopathy has no side effect. That is not the right argument. I mean, there are side effects to modern medicines, but we also know the benefits, and the benefits are much more than the risk that we are taking. That is the importance. With alternative medicine, it's just risk taking, because you don't know the benefits.
Right. I'd like to take a small break here and mention that as an independent content creator, my main source of income is my audience. If you'd like to support me through Patreon, Buy Me Coffee, or YouTube memberships, you can find the links below. And now back to the rest of the podcast. In your opinion, is the Ayush Ministry also doing anything beneficial?
I mean,
like let's say, for example, are they doing some research which might have some positive outcome in the future?
I'm yet to see a proper research that has a good quality research with good methodology yet to come out from the stables of Ayush. I'm sure they're doing a lot of research, because a lot of money is being used, or a lot of funds have been given to Ayush to carry out research. And the website talks about a lot of research that is ongoing, some of which are completed also. But I don't see any of them being published in any reputed journals, or any of those with a proper methodology or a solid quality kind of trial. Because if that had happened, we would definitely know about it. So what we get instead are small pilot trials, or some basic science trials, some computational studies, some observational studies from not only the public Ayurveda institutes, but from private Ayurveda companies. But this does not translate to anything clinically. So I have not yet seen a good publication or a research study that has been fully funded by the ministry and that has come out from the stables of Ayush.
So are most of the studies that they do, they're not genuinely looking for evidence because fearing maybe it might actually go against what they're trying to do? Are they only trying to are they doing some sort of smoke and mirrors trick to make people think that there is some research being done on this front? Is it like that in your opinion?
I mean, a lot of research from Ayurveda perspective are actually poor quality. I mean, like it is exactly like smoke and mirrors. For example, and most of these are not done by the public institutes. I mean, public Ayurveda institutes. Most of them are actually done and published by private institutes or private Ayurveda companies. For example, Patanjali has a lot of publications under their belt. And most of them are basic science studies on zebrafish or on Drosophila fly or maybe small animal models, and sometimes purely computational, which means there is no human or any animal involved in it. Such kind of studies are coming out from them. But otherwise, no major studies have come out, especially the negative ones. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of studies done and there might be a lot of negative studies, but they don't get published. Even in modern medical practice also, we don't see a lot of negative studies being published because most of them have some stakeholders, funding component in that, and they would not actually publish it. But from Ayush perspective, especially from homeopathy perspective, there was a study which was done, and it was a randomized controlled trial during the COVID time. And this was on various medications, homeopathic formulations that were supposed to be effective for preventing COVID. So they looked at 3 or 4 formulations, of which Arsenicum album 30C was one. So that was the formulation that was initially approved and promoted by Ayush Ministry as a preventive for coronavirus infection, Arsenicum album 30C. That study specifically showed that Arsenicum album 30C was not effective. And this was published in a journal called Homeopathy, which is supposedly homeopathy's biggest impact journal, which has an impact factor of 1. So it was published in that journal. And that was a negative study, which proved that the Ayush Ministry's approved drug did not actually work. The interesting part was that the approval for this drug as a corona preventive was made public probably in November 2021. And this study came out in September 2021. So once the study came in, after that, an approval was done. And this was a negative study. And I don't think people know about it. And I think the authorities very calmly ignored this fact that the approved drug was actually found to be ineffective in their own study. So this has happened. But I don't think any such negative studies have come out from the Ayurveda perspective, because Ayurveda studies can never be negative. It has to be positive. If it is not positive, they will make it positive, because they will take soft endpoints. For example, they would not look at clinical outcomes. For example, even in COVID research, you see all the herbal medications related publications. What they'll do is they'll see, instead of looking at a strong clinical outcome, for example, death, or need for ventilation, or need for hospitalization, or length of hospitalization, they would look at some blood marker. They would look at CR-reactive protein. They would look at some interleukin-6, or they would look at some other antioxidant or oxidant thing in the blood, and they would say that, these levels have gone up and down, and they'll say that, yeah, it is benefiting. So those kind of smoke and mirror studies are plenty. And that is what has happened even with the studies on herbal formulations like Coronil, where they did not actually look at good clinical endpoints. Instead of that, they looked at surrogate markers and said that, these markers are going up and down, and it is from the baseline, it is much better. So it's a good drug. So these kind of studies do happen.
I've done an analysis of a similar study that looked at a biomarker, and looked at its rates changing before and after the program. And the program was some meditation program.
Oh, yes. I know the study.
Yeah. So, but another thing I want to ask you was, is this alternative medicine problem a problem that's unique to India? Other countries that have similar departments, or do they have similar problems?
Alternative medicine is global. So every country has its own, its own specialized alternative medicine. India, it is Ayurveda. Within India, if you come down south and look at Tamil Nadu, you have Siddha. So Siddha is just exactly like Ayurveda, but there are some small changes in principles and practice. But ultimately, it's all related to the humoral theory and pulse method of diagnosis and absolute nonsensical ways of diagnosing a disease instead of actually looking at it from a scientific point of view. So Nadi Pariksha is what is known as pulse diagnosis. So they do all that. So that is in Tamil Nadu Siddha. And if you go to any of these states, southern states or northeast states, they have their own traditional medicine. That is like folk medicine. So that is what we have. We have something known as Paramparagata Vaidyam, which means it's a traditional kind of medicine that has been handed down generations. It has nothing to do with Ayurveda, but it has Ayurvedic principles in it when it comes to treatment with herbs and minerals and not. So they are not actually registered degree holders in BHMS, that is Bachelor's in Ayurvedic Medicine and Surgery. But they are like traditional healers. Such traditional healers with different kinds of attitudes towards patient care exist in every state. For example, in Northeast, it might be totally different, the way they treat, but it's all traditional healers only, ultimately. In Japan, they have something known as Kampo medicine, that is KAMPO, that is their traditional medicine. China has TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. Even if you go to Europe and US, they have their own, in South America and all, they have their own kind of traditional practices. Those are traditional healers. But I think India is the only country where this is being taught as a profession over 5 years, giving a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and sometimes you can even go for a PhD in Ayurveda. That is, according to me, a wastage of youth, studying pseudosciences in colleges and wasting time. So India is the only country where there are colleges built for this, with so much of infrastructure wastage, teaching these kinds of pseudoscientific, primal and primitive, pre-scientific era practices to young people as a career option. I don't see that anywhere else, and probably China is doing it as an integrative part. So they have traditional Chinese medicine and you have conventional medicine going hand in hand. And I think traditional Chinese medicine, anyone can go and study there as a diplomate course or anything, but not like what we do in India, because this is another level of promotion of pseudoscientific practices as a career and as a profession.
Are there things like liver injuries due to alternative medicine in any of these schools of medicine?
Of course there are. So there are a lot of publications from South Korea, from China, from Japan, on herbal medicine related liver injuries, kidney injuries, bone marrow failures, even a lot of blood related problems, severe allergic reactions, anaphylaxis, severe allergic reactions or allergic syndromes like Stevens-Johnson syndrome, where your skin surface and mucosa and all are affected. So many publications are there. Traditional Chinese medicine is the same absolute hogwash like Ayurveda, because both are pseudoscientific. But they have a lot of studies done specifically on pharmacovigilance. So if they have a particular herb, for example, there is this herb called Polygonum multiforum. Very, very commonly used. I think it's like the ashwagandha that we use here. Very, very commonly used in China. And Polygonum multiforum has been implicated in serious liver injuries over the decades. And there are large series and large systematic analysis done on Polygonum multiforum related liver injury by the traditional medicine practitioners and conventional doctors in China. And they have published it in proper journals and in really reputed journals. So they know the stuff that can harm people, and they actually talk about it, they publish it, they accept it. In India, if you say turmeric is going to harm your liver, or giloy is going to harm your liver, ashwagandha is going to harm your liver, nobody accepts it. That is the biggest problem. They think it is an attack on Hinduism or an attack on the Vedic philosophies, an attack on Ayurveda, a defamation of the country. They think a lot of things except the importance of thinking about the patient and the public at large. So I don't know why that happens. I'm not sure why that cognitive dissonance exists. If you look at from India point of view regarding patient care, specifically with regards to adverse events of a medical practice. But other countries accept that and they work around it. So Polygonum multiforum thumb, that particular herb is not very frequently used in many preparations in TCM now because of the particular studies that have come upon it. But I don't see any of that happening in India.
So they have good laws around regulation and stuff which prevent these toxic active ingredients.
Yeah, I'm not saying they are any better than what we have here, because there are a lot of herbal liver injuries in China. In fact, when the Asia Pacific Association of Study of Liver conducted a global scale, I mean, in the sense in Asia-Pacific regions, including China, India, Asia-Pacific regions, when they conducted a study on drug-induced liver injuries, the number one cause of drug-induced liver injuries leading to stable liver disease becoming unstable. We call that as acute on chronic liver failure. The number one cause was complement alternative medicine. And that was because of China and India, mostly China. And these numbers are been rising because previously in India, the commonest cause of liver injury is still anti-tuberculosis medications. Anti-tuberculosis medications cause liver injury. It is very common, easily identifiable, manageable. Nobody dies of it. Nobody dies of it. It's easily manageable. And then you restart them on a modified version of the anti-TB drugs, and people do well. But the problem with these herbal drugs is that once you have an injury, and because the herbal drugs are given as multi-herbal products, you cannot identify what has actually caused the liver injury. You know that this herbal product has caused it, but not what has caused it. And because of that, the treatment that we can offer them, the options are limited because we don't have an antidote against that. And also because it's identified very late during the course of the illness as a causative. And this has led to a large number of deaths. So if you compare conventional medicine-related liver injury or modern medicine-related liver injury versus herbal liver injury, the severity, complications, death rate, and liver failure or need for liver transplantation is much higher in herbal. And this is published. And the largest data is from Taiwan. Second largest data is from us. Our group has published it. We compared it with modern medicine versus herbal drugs, and we found out that herbal drug-related liver injury patients succumb more to death and complications compared to conventional medicines. Because we have a system in place to identify this in modern medicine. So people are protected. Even if they develop a liver injury or some adverse event, we can act faster and improve their outcomes better.
There was a traditional Chinese medicine drug from which an active molecule called Artemisinin was extracted, and it's a malaria drug today. And the person who discovered this, they won the Nobel Prize for medicine.
Yes.
Can similar research happen in Ayurveda, which might be able to redeem or find something useful in the...
So this is a very common argument that happens when we say that traditional medicine has no value, or current traditional medicine, as in Ayurveda in India, has no value. This is the argument that people bring from traditional Chinese medicine, right? So we still don't have anything like that in traditional Indian medicine. If we follow what they followed, probably yes, we can. So the whole story of how this molecule was identified it's fantastic. So they have the huge treatise, like we have the Samhitas. They have huge treatise in which a lot of application of herbs and the associated symptoms. So for example, to treat some joint pain or treat fever, they have these herbs listed. So what the Chinese government did at that time was they prepared, and this was within the army, they prepared a special group where they identified all the herbs that can reduce fever as per the texts. And then they did studies on these herbs to see which of these herbs actually reduce fever the best. And that group identified that this particular herb, where Artemisinin was identified, reduced fever the best out of all the other herbs that they identified. So they took out that particular herb. They identified the bioactive molecules in that. And that was then subjected to phase 1 to phase 4 trials. And that is how we got to know about Artemisinin being an anti-malarial. So the whole process was scientific. The way they approached it was scientific. The hypothesis that they generated from that old text, which was predominantly based on pseudoscientific principles, the hypothesis generated was actually a scientific hypothesis that we could test. And then that was put into the evidence levels, and ultimately this was identified. So that has nothing to do with traditional Chinese medicine practitioners doing that. Traditional medicine practitioners did not do that. Modern pharmacologists, chemists, 2UU is actually a modern pharmacologist.
The person who extracted it and won the Nobel Prize.
Exactly. So she's a modern medical personnel and a pharmacologist. So she's the one who did that, not traditional Chinese medicine practitioners. Similarly, even in Ayurveda, if you want to identify something, that onus is on the responsibility is on the modern medical community. Because the Ayush community can't do anything. They don't know how to go about it because they are not being taught about this. So if what they do is, even now, if you want to get treated for some gaseous discomfort or some heartburn or something, they would give their own traditional recipe, which is maybe something like a Dhanvantaram Guliga or something. Right, and the patient gets better. They'll say that, the patient got better because of Dhanvantaram Guliga. But that particular tablet has about 12 or 13 herbal components. So what in that worked? That is more important because we want to take away all the background noise. That is what science does. So this is something what people call as reductionist approach.
Yeah.
But this is important. This is important because you have a lot of background noise that can cause adverse events. You want to take out all of that, find exactly what that compound is workable on and how it is working, and if it is working for the benefit or if it is causing any risk. So it might be working properly in a lab-based study or a tissue-level study or a small animal study. But when it comes to a human study, it might be doing something different. So we need to identify that so that we can understand it well at the level of use inside humans. So that is why this reductionist approach is important because only then drug discovery from natural sources is possible. So none of that kind of work is happening in the Ayush department. I mean, they'll say that they are doing it, but it's been so long and we have not seen any new molecule being identified or discovered or being published about from the Ayush departments across the states.
So you were talking about how you can earn these 5-year degrees in Ayurveda, and if a student who's doing that degree right now or is maybe coming out of college and starting his practice right now, who's watching this, what would you say to them? Like maybe they're only learning about how there's a lot of pseudoscience in these alternative practices now, and they didn't know this when they started their learning and all that. But now they're coming out of college and they don't want to do this as a profession. They don't want to practice this. But it is illegal for you to do modern medicine without a license, right? Yeah. Without a degree. So what would you say to someone coming out of these colleges now?
I mean, I have had a lot of such young graduates messaging me on Twitter and on my email asking me what to do next because they have passed out of the college. They have completed 5 years of bachelor's in Ayurvedic medicine and surgery, and or even homeopathy or even Siddha, Unani. They're all the same, and now they have come to know that this is not the right way to provide healthcare for people, especially after coming into contact with science communicators like myself. So what they want to know what can they do next to improve their chances at a profession or a career. So initially, a lot of these courses were completely shunned away from other courses that they could branch out into. For example, if I do my MBBS, I can, if I want to go into hospital administration, I can do an MHA, Masters in Hospital Administration. Or if I wanted to do a public health course, I can do a Masters in Public Health MPH. Or I can even do a diploma or a fellowship. That option is open for me because I have done my MBBS. But if I have done my BAMS or BHMS, earlier on, these options were not available because that's not the real medical degree that you're holding. But now a lot of institutes, including government institutes, have opened up the option of BMS or BHMS graduates to opt for other branches, to take complete U-turns. So somebody who has done a BHMS can go do a master's in public health and then start doing work in public health. And that has nothing to do with the stuff that they have learned. So the public health has its own set of principles and protocols and practice which are modern medicine based, and they can directly go into that. So I have a person who's been constantly interacting with me on Twitter, who's actually a homeopathy graduate from Kottayam. But now he has gone into, he's completed his master's in public health and gone into public health research and currently in Vellore. So he's branched out. He's free from all that quackery practice that he had to do. Similarly, even I know a lot of BHMS graduates who have initially they used to do something known as medical transcription and went on to being medical transcriptionist. Some of them do master's degree in, like I said, public health or nutrition or something like that. And they can just branch out. So there are a lot of options there. I mean, going back and doing another bachelor's degree is not that, not that feasible for everyone. But then there are BHMS and BMS graduates who have actually gone back and done MBBS and then gone and taken the right path. But that is expensive. You have to again spend a lot of time studying and again studying the degree, for the degree also. So that's not feasible for everyone. But if these graduates look close enough, they can find a lot of ways to give back to the community through the scientific method. It need not necessarily be that they have to be doctors. There is a lot of paraclinical and paramedical options available where you can contribute to the society in a meaningful way without having to defraud your patients and without having to be deceptive on your own. So the whole aspect of, these hardcore Ayurveda practitioners who come at me, they have deceived themselves first so that they can deceive others. So that is how that's how that wave moves. And some of them actually come out of it. So the ones who come out of it should be vocal enough to make other younger graduates or younger students understand that this is not the right way to go about a profession or a career. And I think I'm not the person who should be advising this. It's the Ayurveda seniors or practitioners who have come to realize that there are better options for these younger students who cannot maybe get in through MBBS or a medical course. They can opt for a lot more other options than these that can put them on the path of scientific practice. They need not be doctors for that. There are a lot of good options. And I think it's all about looking at what are ways you can branch out and asking around and not being alone in the sense that they should be open. A lot of them are not they're very scared to open up and say that I think this course is complete rubbish and I can't practice like this, giving some proprietary herbal medicines and stuff like that, and you're doing pulse to diagnose diseases when we ideally ask for MRIs and CT scans and everything. Even Ayurveds and homeopaths ask for MRIs and CT scans. They can do that. It's a technology available. They use it. And that is how they diagnose. Or they send to another person to diagnose the condition, then they treat with their own stuff. So these things are all deceptive practices, and somebody who's understood this should tell others that this is the way that you need to go. And there is always a way out. That's what I feel. There is always a way out if you know where to and how to look.
There's a friend of mine, he's a BHMS graduate, but now he's doing nutrition. And he's a fantastic, he has a great career.
Yeah. This is exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
You can contribute more to the society being a nutritionist or a physiotherapist or any paramedical or paraclinical courses that you take. It's not a silly matter. These are very important career choices that you can take instead of anything other than what Ayush can provide you with.
So another question, I think this is very relevant for you also, because you told me that you didn't get through to MBBS the first time you wrote the entrance. In India, the way it works is the ones who get lower ranks in the same medical entrance exams that are conducted for MBBS, the ones who get lower ranks can go into homeopathy, Ayurveda, all these things.
Yeah.
First thing is, were you ever tempted to go into one of those streams?
Never. Because my family has always been very scientifically temperamental.
Okay.
Especially because my dad has been working and he's been a specialist and a super specialist, and He's been exposed to medical science since so long. Looking at these lower ranked options like Ayurveda and homeopathy, it was never crossed paths. Either you get in or you don't. If you don't get in, try again. Try until you get in. That was the dictum at that time. So that we worked harder, and we got in at some point. So I had never had that option to, now you have lost 2 years, let us take whatever we get. That's not the way out. Now, another important aspect is that these are all part of a common examination. Right? So people write the exam, all of them write this examination at one go. And they all get ranks. And based on the ranks, you have the option to choose a scientific field or a pseudo-scientific field. Ideally, this should be split. So you should have separate exams for Ayurveda, BHMS, and Siddha, Naturopathy, Yoga, whatever, and separate exams for MBBS.
Yeah.
Then see how many of them will opt for giving those exams. That is what ideal numbers are, not this what you see. Because right now, a lot of people take up Ayush courses out of desperation. A lot of them take up Ayush courses because they have to maintain a legacy. For example, there are large Ayurveda or traditional Ayurvedic families. I mean, in Kerala also you can see in Kottayam and places like Thrissur, there are large families who are in the business of running Ayurvedic pharmacies and all that, like Kottakkal and all that. So when their next generations come, so they are pushed into that, they go with the flow. They are supposed to take care of that legacy. So they cannot branch out here and there. There are people who go out of it. But normally, what the routine is that they have to maintain that legacy. So they have to go and study Ayurveda for that. So there are people who take Ayurveda based on that to maintain a legacy. Then some of them have pure Ayurvedic businesses. So to run the business, for example, they might have a resort where there is a wellness clinic and things like that. So you need to take that business further ahead. You do a course in bachelor's in Ayurvedic medicine or homeopathy. You are fit for that job. So they take it for that. But otherwise, I don't think anybody in their right minds would choose Ayurveda, homeopathy, yoga, Siddha, naturopathy as their career option ever.
It's funny because I did my engineering and I have a very similar experience, except you don't get lower ranks and then choose something pseudoscientific. There's nothing pseudoscientific in engineering. There's no alternative engineering. But in medicine, you can have an alternative medicine. So I think this exists because medicine, or when a patient gets better, you don't always know it's because of the medicine that they got better. This is what gives rise to the two alternative medicines. They can only exist because patients can get better without medicines.
Yes.
But in engineering or any other field of science, you cannot achieve the end result without doing the actual scientific thing that's there. So
this
medicine,
This is true, and I would add to that point where I think health is a field, especially in a country like India, where there is a huge gap between number of physicians available or doctors or medical personnel available compared to the patients that we are exposed to. I mean, look at countries like the US or Europe. I mean, Austria, you take Germany. I mean, where do they teach? Where is the whole aspect of pushing somebody into an alternative medicine field based on your, curriculum or the examinations that you give or your credit scores or whatever? They don't have such a system there. Why? Because they are able to generate enough healthcare personals to take care of their public and patients. But in India, we are unable to do that. So there is a huge gap between the numbers of doctors caring for the large numbers of patients. So to bridge that gap and to provide some kind of lower range of infrastructural development and, like that smoke and mirrors thing. So they are pushed into these courses and they say that. And this actually happened last year when Indian government brought out wrong data saying that as per the WHO criteria, we have enough doctors to patient ratio. They did that by adding Ayush doctors also. So if you take out that Ayush part from that, we are not as per what WHO has asked us to be with respect to doctor-patient ratio. And this is what has happened. So they're doing this just to improve the numbers only, in the sense that statistics. But ground level wise, the care that patients get from rural to suburban to urban, huge difference.
Do you think that the government money, the tax money which goes into Ayush, if that were to go into, subsidizing or infrastructure development of proper modern medicine, do you think that ratio can be improved, that doctor-patient ratio? If so, how much?
I mean, exact numbers are difficult to say, but I'm sure, and I mean, on Twitter itself, we can see how a lot of people talk about. A lot of students who are doing post-graduation and graduation talk about the specifics that they face in their colleges with respect to infrastructure and patient care. There's a huge gap there, and I believe that a lot of this money, if put to good use, one is that we can improve on infrastructure, we can improve on public health services. We can improve on the numbers of new doctors that we can train, and we can also improve on various new courses that we can develop for the medical science community. For example, if you look at hepatology, that which I have done, there are only very few institutes in India that has hepatology DM as a course. So ILBS is one. Then we have one in Vellore, we have 2 colleges in Chennai, we have one in PJ Chandigarh. And even among those DM hepatology courses, you can actually see that only few institutes perform liver transplantation. So ILBS performs liver transplantation, where I studied, they perform liver transplantation very frequently. PJ Chandigarh does not. The hospitals in Chennai does not. So the DM students who come out from these institutes, they are not exposed to transplant medicine, whereas we are exposed to transplant medicine. So there is a huge difference within institutes also. So you can actually improve all of that with so much of other extra funding and everything. Yeah. And instead of that, we are happily analyzing and studying pepper and turmeric, which are kitchen spices, for cancer and whatnot, and pumping in money to study cow urine, when all urine is the same. I mean, human urine and cow urine has the same constituents. Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's sad. Shifting gears a little bit, I'm going to ask you, what can the average person who's watching this, what can they do to keep themselves safe?
Is it from Ayush perspective or?
Yeah.
So I think it's all about being informed. For example, you need to know where the sources for your health information are coming from, and if those sources are reliable, and if those sources are validated, and if those sources are from experts. So I can look at it from 2 ways. One is that you have, so I'm going to take an example. I mean, this is just for an example, and there are articles also written on this. So you have Andrew Huberman of Huberman Lab, a very famous podcaster. He's a neurobiology scientist. You have David Sinclair, who is actually a PhD professor who studies biology of aging. Both of them on their podcasts advise people to take a lot of supplements. So Andrew Huberman talks about taking ashwagandha for sleep and whatnot. And there is a line of supplements in his name by other companies also. And David Sinclair mentions that people should take resveratrol, which is actually an anti-aging compound. When studies on that compound since 2015 have shown that there is no benefit, and some of those studies were actually faked, fraudulent studies. Even then, he still proposes. So, but he is a doctor, David Sinclair, and he is Dr. Andrew Huberman. And people will just listen to them and start consuming these supplements. But they are actually scientists. They're basic scientists. They're not clinical doctors. They are not directly associated with managing patients, treating patients, or associated with direct patient care. They do a lot of basic science research on people, in the labs on tissues, in organ systems, or on cellular medium, whatever. But they are not actual doctors. So even that advice is wrong. So a lot of people who ask me, Huberman has said that you can take ashwagandha. But Huberman is not the right authority to say that because he's not a clinical doctor. So if you want to take ashwagandha for your sleep, you have to see a sleep specialist. There are people like that. There are doctors who are sleep specialists. So if the sleep specialist says that, yes, there is evidence for you to consume ashwagandha, thumbs up for that. Same thing with David Sinclair. So he says that if you take resveratrol, you can increase your life expectancy. And he quotes his dad as an example. Because his dad is very old, or somebody he has met is very old and taking this, so this is good. That is how he goes on with it, and he does a lot of appeal to authority because his own publications are on this, and these are all basic science publications, nothing clinical, and he promotes this on his channels and all. But he is not a geriatric medicine specialist. So if a geriatric medicine specialist says geriatric medicine is basically medicine and healthcare to do with older people, the elderly. That's a separate group of doctors that work on only the older people community. So if a geriatric medicine specialist says, exactly, resveratrol is good for you, it can increase your life, of course, I'll agree with it because there has to be some clinical evidence for them to actually say that. But none of them say that. So these are the fake experts that you see on social media. Similarly, when it comes to opting for alternative medical therapies, you can see there will be a host of people who will be advising to consume this and that. A recent Twitter profile of a lady who has absolutely nothing to do with healthcare was promoting the use of bottled gourd juice along with salt to prevent heart attacks. And I think there were like some 21,000 likes on that, and some 1,000 comments on it. And people are actually saying that, yes, this sounds like a very simple thing to do, so let us all try it. Bottled gourd juice is toxic. If it is a bitter bottled gourd juice, you can actually die from it, of vomiting blood. It's that dangerous. So that person is not a health expert, and you cannot follow that advice. So the most important point that I want to make is that you need to vet your sources from where you're getting this advice from. See, I would never suggest a particular medicine to improve your prostate gland health or to improve your ovarian health, because I'm not a urologist, I'm not a obstetrics and gynecologist. I can never say that. But from what I have experienced, or I have experience in, or what I have clinical research experience in, I can definitely talk about liver-related and associated advices to the people. Similarly, they should also, people should be well informed about who is promoting what, and especially when this comes from the Ayurveda or homeopathy community. The next best step, so they are Ayurveds, so they can definitely promote Ayurvedic practices. So the next best step is to talk to your primary care physician. Everybody has a doctor. So everybody can approach a doctor wherever they are. Approach that person and ask them if this is an ideal advice that I can follow. If that person looks at it and says that, yes, this has got this much clinical evidence, or there are benefits to it, follow it. Otherwise, don't follow it. So you always have to have second opinions on information that you get from healthcare sources, online and offline, and always vet it, and from your own side and also with another person who is an expert in that field. Otherwise, you will be led astray without doubt.
Yeah, I have 2 points here. The first is about how do people figure out what are genuine sources of information and what are not genuine. Like, I feel like this is a fault of our education system. Like, we are taught what to think, but not how to think. We're not taught to base our conclusions on evidence, or base our understandings of the world on evidence. Instead, we outsource our thinking to someone else.
Yes.
And In fact, I would say all religions are basically outsourcing your thinking, how to act in life. What does my religion tell me? Oh, I'll do that. That's basically
Outsourcing your brain is the right thing, the right words. I think for even with this health misinformation, that is what is happening. People can't think for themselves.
What do you think about the education system? They should, in my opinion, they should prioritize teaching students how to think over what to think.
No, exactly. I think there are some institutes that are doing that now. There are a lot of different syllabi that are available for children where they teach them how to think, instead of what to think. And I feel that this will catch up at some point because critical thinking, the teaching on critical thinking should start from the school level. It's not like you have to start it after you graduate or become a postgraduate. So for me, it started in my post-graduation. I started thinking critically when I was a postgraduate because I was exposed to the kind of misery brought on by diseases. It was important to critically think for the patient, not just from a scientific perspective, but from a humane perspective also. So that is when everything else became background noise. For me, evidence at hand, the best that you could do for that person with respect to compassion, ethics, and morality, all of this took the front seat. And that is how my thinking changed when I started practicing. But it's too late into my profession. So that should have happened at the school level. If you look at, people don't care about other people now. Doctors don't care about their patients. Patients don't care about their family. Families don't care about the patients. It's all a big mess. When I deal with so many people, patients and their families, I can see that there is so much of disconnection, especially when they have been already availing treatments from different places. It's all disconnected everywhere. And my whole idea is not just to prescribe pills and treat, but mostly to make sure that disconnection does not happen. So everything is connected together, and then only we can treat the patient as a person. So all these happens because we are not taught about critical thinking, compassion, morality, ethics from a very young age.
Yeah, even me, I learned to think critically, or my more questioning or rational thoughts only came to me after college or during college a little bit, when it should have come to me or taught to me in school. I always say that I'm this way despite school, not because of school. So, yeah. And another thing that I want to ask you was, I was speaking to him off camera about this. I told you how there's a relative of mine who's also a doctor, and he's also very scientific, rational minded. At every stage in his student life or professional career, he has always been busy with one thing or the other. Maybe studying or preparing for the MBBS, college, student life, studying all that stuff, practicing your internship, residency, life goals, all these things. So even though he's very curious about all these alternative medicine and maybe even all these things that you commonly find in misinformation circles.
Healthcare myths.
Yeah. He was curious about that, but he never found the time to actually find the answers to those questions. And he tells me how, videos like mine help him do that. I want to ask you, you were talking about how doctors themselves spread misinformation.
Yes.
Do you think some of them, out of sheer lack of time, are misinformed and don't spend the time to actually learn the things? And is that why they end up spreading all this?
I think there are multiple factors as to why doctors don't update themselves, especially with regards to the misinformation that is prevalent in the patient community. So this is very important. So the doctors themselves have maybe some confirmational biases or misinformation at hand. But it is important for us to ask the patient about or question them about the misinformation that they believe in. For example, I mean, in my practice, and this is, I started talking about this because some patients actually started asking me, because I've been very open with my patients. I talk to them at length. So they find me friendly to ask these questions, even though they feel they are stupid questions. They keep doctors at a level, always. I mean, they are at a pedestal, all the doctors. Patients treat them like that. So some of them feel that some doctors would not like these questions being asked because they feel that it's too stupid, so they don't ask. But for me, there are no questions are stupid. All questions are important from the patient. So there was this patient who, when I was in maybe probably 2017, when I was actually moving into Ernakulam Medical Center, one of the patients there, and I remember this very clearly, she was having acute hepatitis A infection. So that's jaundice with hepatitis because of viral hepatitis A. And it's a self-limiting condition. It goes away in 3 to 4 weeks' time. You just need to support good nutrition, some symptomatic care, that's enough. So she went to an Ayurveda initially, who put her on a very restricted diet, because the nutritional science in Ayurveda is it's chaotic, and it's one of the worst that you can actually expose a patient to. And because of that, she had become very emaciated and weak. So I asked her, she asked me, what can I eat? So I said, you can eat anything you want. Then she looked at me and said, can I have egg? I said, yeah, you can have eggs, no problem. She said, no, the whole egg with the yellow, can I have that? I said, yes, you can. But my jaundice won't increase. So their notion is that if they eat something yellow, the jaundice will increase. It's actually a stupid thing to hear. I mean, from somebody who's educated, you'll think that what a stupid question. Yeah, the yellow in the egg is not the reason for the jaundice in her. It's viral hepatitis A. But I understood that they are asking us genuinely. They don't know about it. So I told her that please have one egg every day in whatever form you want. That yellow is not going to increase your jaundice yellow. And she was so happy because her favorite food was egg. And she recovered within a few weeks' time. Similarly, people come with a host of misinformation from their side. And once you know what all misinformation are common in the community, you can ask them that, or you clear it offhand. For example, if somebody comes with viral hepatitis A to me now, I'll tell them, please have full eggs. I don't wait for them to ask me. So I give them the right information. So this is one reason why doctors are not able to handle misinformation well within the patient community. Because one is that doctors are not aware that patient community is a cesspool of misinformation. And they have to ask and clear it out. Because every patient does not have the education or the knowledge or the information that a doctor has regarding that particular disease or nutrition, and you don't expect them to have. So you can't take them for granted. No patient should be taken for granted. And when I started understanding very common misinformations on health and nutrition among my liver disease patients, it was so easy for me to talk to them. And it was very easy for them to accept me. Because I was telling them stuff they wanted to hear. All the doubts are coming out automatically, are being cleared automatically from me without them asking me. So once this is in place, I think doctors' level of misinformation will actually come down. Because some of these doctors have the exact same misinformation within them that the patient has. I've had a lot of patients, forget Ayurveds and homeopaths, I've had patients coming to me and telling me that an MBBS doctor or an MD doctor who has initially seen them has advised to stop all oils when you develop a liver disease. I mean, I've not heard such a nonsensical nutritional advice ever in my life. You don't stop any oils. You can have any oils you want. You can use ghee, you can use coconut oil, you can use olive oil, vegetable oils. You can use any oil you want. You don't stop oils because you develop a liver disease or jaundice. Even doctors still tell patients to starve from a non-vegetarian point of view. No meats, no fish, no eggs. Doctors do that. That is because they themselves have been taught that misinformation at some point, and this most probably comes from the elder community within their family. They would have had jaundice when they were young, and they were subjected to these stuff at that time. So they tell the same things to their patients when they become doctors. So this is not something simple that we can just completely smoothen out within a few days' time. I think it takes generations. Maybe my generation won't see it. Maybe my child's generation would actually see some change in how misinformation is handled well.
Sure, again, shifting gears a bit. So for me, when someone sees my channel and the content I do, how I call out myths and misinformation, and they don't see anyone else doing that. So in the whole sea of misinformation, my voice sounds like it's coming from a madman, like someone who's just saying some stuff, and clearly when everyone else is saying this, saying X, I'm saying Y. There's something wrong with me is what people think. They don't understand that I'm showing you evidence. I'm not asking anyone to trust me or believe me, but I'm showing you evidence. Believe that evidence. Have you ever faced any similar treatment from anyone in your audience when you say stuff they've never heard before, or they never hear anyone else saying, or why do you think no other doctor or not a lot of other doctors right now call out what you're calling out?
I mean, I hear this almost every day. I mean, it feels like you are swimming against the currents, right? That is the exact feeling. And I think it's important for us to be iconoclasts. You have to shatter dogmas. And it has to be done this way. There is no other way. You have to anger people. You have to piss off a lot of people. You have to make them feel sad, guilty, angry, I mean, whatever. But this is the only way that we can do it. And there is no other way. And I get these kind of reactions from the doctor community as well as the audience, the non-medical community also. And I think it's mostly to do with how they perceive that particular information. For example, if I say that, I'll take the very, very fragile example of yoga, right? So every time I tweet something about yoga, that is when I get abused the maximum on Twitter. So two things I get maximum abuses on Twitter is one is yoga and one is turmeric, right? So when I say something about yoga, to the fact that I started principles of yoga. So I'm not just talking about the structures and things that you see in studios. I'm talking about real principles on which yoga has been based, as in Patanjali Sutra or in Hatha Yoga. They are pseudo-scientific principles. And yoga is basically a set of physical exercises, mostly to do with postural exercises, where there is a component of mindfulness, spirituality, focus, liberation, and a lot of philosophy is included. So when I tell people that yoga is not an aerobic exercise, it is an anaerobic exercise. And there are new forms of yoga from the West, which are very rigorous and vigorous, and they may be aerobic exercises. But classical yoga is not aerobic. So it is not considered an exercise. It is a stretch. This is enough to anger the whole community. And they come with knives and daggers at me. But the fact is that there is evidence and there are publications. There is a lot of material written on this in a lot of physical therapy journals and sports and nutritional journals about how classical yoga is not an aerobic exercise. But people don't look at that fact. I'm providing evidence. They're not looking at it. They are just calling me out saying yoga is Hinduism. It has come from the Vedic period. It's India's gift to the world. So you are an anti-Hindu. You are against the Veda. You are a Christian missionary. So it goes that way. So but you keep saying what is true. So that is how it is. So I mean, you feel. I mean, when I started off with talking about yoga and such practices maybe 5 years back, and when I talk about it now, I see that the emotion level within the community is the same. It has not reduced. But we keep doing it because at some point I can see that there are people who accept it. So we need just a few people to accept it. You are not going to change the whole world. Few people accept it. They will go and talk to other people. They will understand. They will talk to more people. So this is how the science communication goes. So the whole aspect of swimming against the current, feeling completely odd when you talk facts and truth. I think it's part of the whole deal regarding protecting and shielding the public against misinformation. And that is the sacrifice, or that is the deal that we have to make with ourselves when you go into this. So I am okay with it.
You're right.
And I'm sure you're also okay with it.
All right, Abhi, I have one last question. With that, we'll end the podcast. And this is a very silly criticism that I've heard. Unfortunately, it's a very common one also. I've heard it from my family too. And the question is this, or the criticism is this: modern medicine doctors, they're saying this against alternative medicines because if their patients go into alternative medicine, they lose business. But I know the answer to this, but I want to hear you address this.
And I have the perfect answer to this. Today morning also I received a response on my tweet saying that, calm down, doctor, your business will be okay. Yoga will not take away your patients. When I spoke something about yoga. So the whole aspect of doctors losing business of alternative medicine practice is a very childish argument. In fact, if I wanted to increase my practice, increase the number of patients that I can admit and manage inside a hospital, inside the ICU, and increase the number of patients where I can offer them a liver transplant, which is a very expensive procedure of 20 to 25 lakhs. I should just keep quiet.
Yeah.
I'll not say anything. People are dying with herbal liver injuries, going for transplants with herbal liver injuries. People will ask me, should we take Ayurveda along with this? Should we do homeopathy along with this? I'll just keep quiet and I'll say, do whatever you feel like. It's fine. I respect your decision. So if I say that is how I increase my business. But I'm doing the exact opposite.
You're doing what's good for the patient.
I'm telling them, don't do this so that you don't land up in front of me and I don't have to admit you and you don't have to waste money and ultimately you don't have to actually go into an ICU or get a new organ by the end of it, which is more money to the hospital. So basically, I am ruining my business by talking against Ayush. If I wanted to increase my business, I would keep quiet and I would consider Ayush my friend and embrace it. I'm not doing that.
Okay, Abhi, I know I said that was my last question, but no, I actually thought of something else. This is my last question, and I want to ask you because this is important. I noticed that this visceral reaction to when you say something, when you tweet something against alternative medicine, is from the people who are in these professions. The main fear from that community is that, hey, where will our profession be if what you say undermines what we do? Like, will we be able to earn a living if what you say actually has any ground? What are your thoughts on this? What would you say to someone who feel their profession is being attacked by what you do?
I can cite a classical example this is a real example that has happened to me. So I had a 14-year-old girl who came in with severe liver injury, severe jaundice and hepatitis. And ultimately, we figured out that the reason for her jaundice and hepatitis was because of alcoholic liver injury and severe chronic arsenic poisoning. And it was all from a large number of Ayurvedic formulations that she was being put on by an Ayurveda group. The hospital is CNS hospital. It's in Kerala only. So they were treating her for epilepsy, for seizures. And she was on these Ayurvedic, about 8 or 9 of these Ayurveda medications for about 5 years. And some of them were kashayas, which contained alcohol, which we analyzed and found out. And a lot of the bhasmas and churnas, the powder Ayurvedic formulations that she was on, contained high levels of arsenic. So she got poisoned with arsenic in the due course of 5 years. And she got an alcoholic liver disease in a 14-year-old. You can imagine. Alcoholic liver disease in a 14-year-old girl. Because of Ayurveda. So we published this. We published it in a peer-reviewed journal. This is Oxford Case Reports, one of the best case reports journal out there. And once this was published, and people actually started talking about it, even the German media behemoth, Der Spiegel, wrote about it. There was a podcast on them by them on this, especially this, because it was a fantastical diagnosis and something that was really out of the blue for us. And after this came out, I received a legal letter from the hospital, the Ayurveda hospital, by the MD and CEO of that hospital, who himself is an Ayurveda practitioner, saying that I have defamed his institution, because of which there is a lot of monetary loss. So he sent me a legal letter. So which means his business has gone down, and he is now going to sue me for defamation. Never in that letter I found any amount of remorse from him, because it was his treatment that landed this girl in this current position. And now she has to be on lifelong surveillance because of chronic arsenic toxicity. People can develop different types of cancers of the skin, lung, and liver in the long term. They don't come up now, they come up much later. So this girl is on lifelong follow-up just because this man gave her these medications which were untested, non-evidence-based, and contaminated. And that letter was all about him losing his business.
Yeah.
So if I am doing this, and this is helping people understand, making people shy away from alternative medicine practices, and if that is hurting their business, deal with it. They have to deal with it. I don't have to do anything about it. Because I care for my patients, and I care for my future patients whom I don't want to see developing this, which is avoidable health burden or risk burden. So if somebody is feeling threatened by this and the business is going to go away, they have to deal with it.
Yeah,
it's not my problem.
What I always say to anyone who says, hey, these professions are being attacked, I would say the purpose of medicine is not to give someone a profession. The purpose of medicine is to make a sick patient better.
Simple as that.
Yeah. And with that, Abhi, I think we'll end the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thank you.
I'll see you.
Thank you for having me on your first podcast. It was an honor.
For sure. It was an honor for me too.
Thank you.
I'll see everyone next time.
Bye. Take care.
Hope everyone enjoyed that podcast as much as I enjoyed taking that interview. I'd just like to remind everyone that all this content is produced with the help of direct support from my audience. And if you'd like to support me to do the same like these wonderful people, then you can find the links below. You have options like Patreon, Buy Me Coffee, UPI, YouTube memberships. Links can be found below. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, remember, science is dope.